My name's Anna, I'm 28, and this morning my brother tossed 50 cents at me like I was busking on a sidewalk and said, "Keep the change, sis." Everyone grabbing breakfast at Golden Morning saw it, and the worst part was that I just smiled and said, "Thanks." That's what quiet little pushovers do, I guess. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like and subscribe, because you'll want to hear what came next. Let me rewind a bit and tell you how I ended up here, standing behind a counter at 6 a.m. with a coffee-stained apron, while my own brother turned me into a punchline. 6 months earlier, my grandfather Walter called with that shaky tone he used when he needed help, but didn't want to admit it. His longtime employee had quit overnight, leaving him alone to run Golden Mornings, the small Manhattan café that was once his pride and joy back in the 80s. "Anna, sweetheart," he'd said, "I know you're busy with that graphic design job, but could you spare an old man a few mornings?" Those few mornings turned into every morning, because how could I walk away from the man who'd raised me when my parents were too busy worshiping my golden child brother? The cafe sat on the corner of 42nd and Lexington, a little time capsule in a city that chewed up everything old. Grandpa opened the first Golden Mornings in 1979, and by 1985 he owned 12 locations across New York. Then Grandma Eleanor passed, and suddenly success didn't mean a thing. He sold all but the original cafe, the one where they met, where he proposed, where they built their happiest memories. Every day at 5:30 a.m. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'd unlock the glass doors, start the espresso machine, and become someone completely different from the confident designer I was later in the day. Here, I was just Harold's granddaughter, the girl who never made the coffee quite like Grandma Eleanor but tried her hardest anyway. The regulars knew me now. Mrs. Whitmore wanted her decaf with 2 sugars and always asked about Grandpa's health. Detective Margaret grabbed his black coffee, barely said a word, but tipped well. And then there was Bradley, 32, corporate lawyer, shiny SUV owner, and my daily source of humiliation. This morning began like any other. I stocked the pastry case, wiped the tables, and braced myself to serve people who seemed to have their lives together. At exactly 7:15, the bell rang. "Well, well," Ryan said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look who's playing waitress again." He wore his power suit like armor, sharp edges, expensive fabric. His briefcase probably cost more than I made in 2 months. He smirked that familiar smirk, the one that said he knew exactly how to get under my skin. "The usual?" I asked, already reaching for a medium cup. "Actually," he said, checking his phone, "make it a large. Big client meeting. Real-world stuff successful people do." I poured his coffee, added his splash of cream, and set it down. "That'll be $4.50. He pulled out a 20, placed it down, and said, "Keep the change." Then he paused. "Wait, that's too generous for someone in your position." He swapped the 20 for a 5, frowned again, and finally laid out exact change plus 50 cents. "There we go. A tip that matches your skill level." The room froze. Mrs. Whitmore looked horrified. Detective Margaret actually glanced up, and the college kid stopped typing mid-keystroke. I smiled. I actually smiled and said, "Thank you, Bradley. Have a great day." Because standing up to him would mean admitting he'd hurt me. Because causing a scene would upset Grandpa, who didn't need more stress. Because 28 years had taught me that peacekeeping mattered more than pride. Ryan strutted out, probably proud of himself. The crowd slowly resumed pretending they hadn't witnessed it. I kept working, but inside, something cracked. As I steamed milk, I caught my reflection in the espresso machine. A woman who looked smaller than she should. That night I called my best friend Emily and told her what happened. "Anna," she said, "you know that's not normal, right? Brothers don't treat sisters like staff." "He's just stressed," I muttered, hearing myself excuse him again. "And you're not?" she shot back. "You're juggling 2 jobs, caring for your grandfather, and letting your own family walk over you." She was right. Admitting it, though, meant accepting that my family dynamic was toxic, that I'd been stuck in a role no one asked if I wanted. Before bed, I promised myself things would change. Tomorrow I'd speak up. I had no clue how much tomorrow would really change. The next morning, Grandpa moved slower than usual. I found him at 5 a.m., an hour early, sitting at his favorite table with cold coffee and that far-off look. "Grandpa," I said gently, "you okay?" He looked up, momentarily lost, then his eyes cleared. "Anna, sweetheart, just thinking about your grandmother." I sat with him, noticing his trembling hand. "Tell me about her," I said. His face brightened. "She made the best coffee in New York, not just because she knew the right temperature, but because she poured love into every cup. Folks came for that feeling of being cared for. He gestured around the cozy cafe. This place was our dream. Eleanor wanted seasonal menus, community nights, a place where everyone felt like family. You did that? I said softly. Mrs. Whitmore comes here for comfort. Detective Margaret won't start his day anywhere else. You built something special. We built it, he corrected. After she died, the other shops felt empty. This was the only one that still felt alive. The bell rang. Mrs. Whitmore, right on time, in her purple coat with her half-read romance novel. Morning, dears, she chirped, settling at her window seat. Harold, you're up early. Couldn't sleep, he replied, standing to help behind the counter. Anna's running the show just fine. As I made her decaf, I watched him move, steady but slower, each motion deliberate, every item in its place. You know, he said quietly while wiping the counter, your brother dropped by yesterday. My hand froze on the espresso wand. Bradley? Asked a lot about the business, profits, property value. A chill ran through me. What kind of questions? Oh, lawyer things, he said lightly. Insurance, debt, building worth. Said he's concerned about my retirement. His tone was casual, but something felt off. The bell rang again, and Detective Margaret walked in, bringing his usual cigarette scent and that intense gaze. Black coffee? I asked. Thanks, kid. He handed over a crumpled dollar. Your grandpa all right? He looks tired. I glanced at Grandpa arranging pastries. Just one of those days. Margaret studied me for a moment. Family business gets messy. Take care of yourself. His words stuck with me. He'd never given personal advice before. What had he seen that I hadn't? The morning rush came and went, but I kept an eye on Grandpa. He moved slower, pausing to catch his breath, sometimes pressing his hand to his chest when he thought I wasn't looking. Grandpa, I said quietly during a slow stretch around 9:30, maybe you should see Dr. Whitmore this week, just to be safe. I'm fine, sweetheart, he replied, though his tone didn't match the words. Just getting old, that's all. By noon, the cafe was nearly empty, except for a college kid hammering on her keyboard and a businessman muttering into his phone in the corner. Grandpa Walter sank into his chair, barely touching the sandwich I'd made for him. Think I'll head home for a nap, he said. You'll be okay handling things here? That caught me off guard. He never left before closing, no matter how quiet it got. Of course, Grandpa. Go rest. I've got this. As he gathered his coat and hat, he turned at the door. Anna, I hope you know how much it means having you here. Your help, your company, the care you show for this place. It's everything to me. His sincerity hit me hard. You know I love being here, I said. I know, he answered softly, pausing before stepping out. And don't forget, your grandmother would have loved seeing you here. You've got her gift for taking care of people. When he left, the cafe felt emptier than usual. I wiped tables, restocked the counter, and tried to shake off the unease creeping in. My thoughts kept circling back to what he'd said about Bradley's visit. Since when did my brother care about Grandpa's finances? My phone buzzed. A text from Bradley. Need to talk. Family dinner Sunday. Important family business. Family dinner. We hadn't had one of those since Christmas, when Ryan spent 2 hours bragging about his latest courtroom win while we all nodded like his audience. What could possibly be important family business now? Another text popped up. Bring Mom's lasagna recipe. The one Grandpa likes. Even through a screen, Ryan still managed to sound bossy. But the mention of Grandpa's favorite dish made my stomach tighten. What was he planning? The rest of the afternoon crawled by. I served a few customers, balanced the till, cleaned the espresso machine until it shined, and found myself lingering after closing, reluctant to go. This cafe had become my safe place, the one corner of my life where I felt capable and useful. Standing outside afterward, I looked through the big front windows. The warm light made it glow like a memory, cozy, alive, full of quiet joy. I didn't know it then, but a week later, everything would fall apart. Still, something in me whispered to hold on to that moment, because peace like that never lasted long in my family. Sunday dinner felt like walking straight into an ambush. Mom had set out her good china, the kind reserved for holidays or when Ryan wanted to impress someone. Dad sat at the head of the table, his serious discussion face firmly in place, and Ryan lounged like he owned the house. Anna, sweetheart, Mom said, taking the lasagna from my hands. You look exhausted. Are you sleeping enough? Translation, you look awful, but we'll call it concern. I'm fine, Mom. Just busy. I sat across from Bradley, who barely looked up from his phone. "Speaking of work," he said finally, "how's that coffee shop thing going?" "It's going fine," I replied. "Grandpa likes having me there." He set his phone down and gave me that calculating lawyer stare. "And he's paying you, right?" His tone made it sound like a trap. "It's not about money," I said flatly. "He's family." "Family who happens to own valuable Manhattan property," he said smoothly. "Property that'll need management when he gets older." Dad cleared his throat. "That's actually what we wanted to talk about. Your grandfather's future care?" Mom returned with plates, her motions quick and deliberate. "We're worried about him living alone, Anna. Running that café at his age isn't realistic." "He loves that café," I said firmly. "It's where he and Grandma Eleanor built their lives." Yes, we know," Ryan said, waving a hand. "But love doesn't pay medical bills or retirement costs." I could feel my jaw tighten. "What are you getting at, Bradley?" He leaned forward, eyes bright. "I've been looking into it. That corner building is worth over $2 million, maybe more with development. Grandpa could sell, live comfortably, and move somewhere that suits his age and health." "Somewhere more appropriate," I echoed, setting my fork down. "That café is his home, his connection to Grandma. You can't put a price on that." "Anna," Dad said in that calm, patronizing tone I hated, "we get that you're sentimental, but we have to be realistic. He's not young, and the business isn't exactly thriving." "How would you even know?" I snapped. "You haven't set foot in there in years." Their silence said enough. "That's not the point," Mom said quickly. "He needs family to make sure he's cared for." "I am family," I said, "and I'm the one actually there." Ryan reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "I've been reviewing his finances. Did you know he's turned down multiple rental offers? That building could bring in triple the cafe's income." "Rental offers?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Commercial tenants willing to pay top dollar," he said, spreading papers across the table like a closing argument. "He's sitting on a gold mine and letting it rot." My head was spinning. "Have you talked to him about any of this?" "Not yet," Dad admitted. "We thought it might come better from you." And there it was. They wanted me to convince Grandpa to sell, to be the weapon they used. "No," I said. "No?" Bradley's tone sharpened. "No, I won't be part of this." His smile turned cold. "Anna, we're trying to secure his future, not manipulate him. Would you rather he end up in some underfunded nursing home because he refused to make smart choices? I'd rather he spend his days surrounded by what he loves, with people who respect him," I said, voice shaking. "That's sweet," Mom said stiffly, "but love won't pay for full-time care when he needs it." The rest of dinner felt like a courtroom. Ryan rolled out charts, numbers, and brochures for retirement homes. My parents nodded along as if this was all compassion and reason. I picked at my food and wondered when we'd stopped being a family and turned into a boardroom. Every practical argument they made carried the same subtext: profit first, feelings later. "Bottom line," Ryan said as Mom served dessert, "Grandpa needs family who'll make hard choices for him when he can't." "He's perfectly capable of deciding for himself," I said. "Is he, though?" Bradley's voice had that smug cross-exam tone. "You've said he's been slowing down, forgetting things, struggling with the business." "I never said that," I shot back. "You didn't have to," he said smoothly. "It's obvious when I visit." The way he said "when I visit" sent a chill through me. "You visit?" I asked. "Occasionally," he said, smirking. "It's smart to keep documentation." And that's when I understood. This wasn't about care or love. It was about inheritance. They were building a case, painting themselves as the responsible ones while casting me as the emotional obstacle. The realization hit like ice water. My own family was planning to strip away everything that mattered to him, and they expected me to help. Tuesday morning, Grandpa didn't show up. By 6:30, worry twisted in my gut. He'd never missed a day without calling, and his phone went straight to voicemail. I ran upstairs to his apartment, calling his name. I found him on the floor, conscious but pale, struggling to breathe. "Anna," he whispered. "I think I'm having a heart attack." The next moments blurred into sirens and flashing lights. I rode in the ambulance, gripping his hand while paramedics worked around him, repeating over and over, "You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay." Like if I said it enough times, it might come true. At the hospital, I called my parents and Bradley, leaving frantic voicemails about where we were and what had happened. Then I sat in a stiff waiting room chair, still wearing my coffee-stained apron, trying not to picture how fragile he'd looked on that stretcher. Ryan showed up first, in his tailored suit and carrying his briefcase like this was just another meeting. "How is he?" he asked, sitting beside me. "They're running tests," I said. "The doctor confirmed it was a heart attack, but they're still checking the damage." Ryan nodded, already unlocking his phone. "I should contact his primary doctor, get the records transferred. Do you know if he has a living will?" The question felt out of place. "I don't think so. We've never talked about that." "Well, we'll need to handle that, along with power of attorney and medical directives. It's important to have protections in place." 20 minutes later, Mom and Dad arrived, Mom gripping her purse like armor, Dad looking uneasy in the sterile lighting. We sat together making awkward small talk, pretending we weren't terrified. After what felt like hours, but was maybe 45 minutes, Dr. Patel walked in. Young, confident, kind-eyed. "Mr. Margaret is stable," she said, and I finally exhaled. "He did suffer a moderate heart attack. We've started treatment to improve blood flow and prevent further complications." "What's his prognosis?" Ryan asked, all business. "With medication and some lifestyle changes, he can live comfortably for years," she replied. "But this is a warning. He'll need close monitoring, less stress, better diet, and family support." I saw the exchange of glances between my parents and Bradley. This was the opportunity they'd been waiting for. "Can we see him?" I asked. Grandpa looked smaller in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. "Did you close the café properly?" he asked, and I almost cried. "Don't worry about that. Everything's fine," I said. My parents fussed with concern, asking questions they didn't really listen to. Ryan stood at the foot of the bed, studying him like a case file. "Harold," Dad said carefully, "the doctor mentioned you'll need to slow down. We want to help however we can." "I appreciate that, Thomas, but I'm tougher than I look." "Of course you are," Mom said gently. "But maybe it's time to think about making life a little easier. Less work, less stress." I saw Grandpa's jaw tighten. He understood exactly what they were implying. "That café keeps me young," he said firmly. "Eleanor and I built something special there. I'm not giving that up." No one's asking you to," Ryan said smoothly. "We just want you to enjoy retirement without the daily grind." Grandpa turned to me. "What do you think, Anna?" The room fell silent. Every eye was on me, Ryan waiting for me to back him up, my parents expecting compliance. "I think," I said slowly, "you should do whatever makes you happy. If the café gives you purpose, then that's what matters." The disappointment on their faces was immediate. Bradley's expression hardened, Mom's lips thinned, and Dad gave me that warning tone. "Anna, you're not considering all the factors." "I'm considering the only one that matters, Grandpa's choice." Grandpa squeezed my hand. "Thank you, sweetheart." The air in the room felt heavy. My family stayed a few more minutes, offering polite words that couldn't hide their frustration. When we left, Ryan lingered at the bedside. "I hope you'll think about what we discussed, Harold. We just want what's best for you." "I know you do," Grandpa said, but there was something cautious in his tone, a politeness that masked suspicion. Walking to the parking garage, Ryan caught up while our parents went ahead. "That was a mistake, Anna," he said quietly. "What was?" "Encouraging him to keep that café. You're feeding into a fantasy." "I'm respecting his right to decide for himself." Ryan stopped, turning toward me. "Anna, he just had a heart attack. He can barely keep track of his pills, and you're letting him pretend he's 25 again because it makes you feel useful." His words stung. "That's not what this is. Isn't it? You've been hiding out there, pretending to help him, when really you just don't want to face your own life. And now you're too caught up in this little world to see what's best for him." "What's best for him?" I shot back. "Selling everything he loves so you can grab the inheritance?" His face went cold. "Careful, Anna. You're starting to sound paranoid." But his eyes told me the truth. This wasn't concern, it was calculation, and I had just drawn a line he wouldn't forget. 3 days later, Grandpa came home, armed with a mountain of prescriptions and a long list of restrictions. He was supposed to rest, avoid stress, and take it slow. Instead, he opened Golden Mornings at 5:30 a.m., like nothing had happened. "Grandpa," I said, finding him behind the counter adjusting the espresso machine, "you're supposed to be taking it easy." "This is taking it easy," he said stubbornly, pointing at a stool behind the register. "Doctor's orders. Sit more." We struck a deal. I'd handle anything physical, lifting, cleaning, hauling supplies, while he manned the register and supervised. It wasn't perfect, but it kept him happy. One quiet morning, he said, "Anna, I've been thinking about what your family said at the hospital." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" "They're not wrong about the practical side. This place is a lot of work, and I'm not getting younger." He paused. "But there are things they don't understand about what your grandmother and I built." "What things?" I asked. He glanced around, then pulled a manila envelope from under the counter. "Your grandmother was a genius with money," he said. "While I focused on coffee, she invested every dollar wisely." Inside were old bank statements, deeds, and investment records I'd never seen. When we sold the other cafés, Eleanor insisted we reinvest instead of spending. She said it was for the future. The numbers on those pages made my head spin. "Grandpa, this is a lot." He nodded. "Much more than anyone realizes, including your family." The Eleanor hit hard. He wasn't struggling. He was quietly wealthy, living simply while everyone assumed otherwise. "Why keep it secret?" I asked. "Because money changes people," he said. "Just look at how your family's acting over what they think I have. Imagine if they knew the truth." A chill went through me. "What do you mean?" "Your brother's been asking detailed questions about my finances. Your parents keep pushing for guardianship and management. They think I'm a confused old man." I remembered Bradley's questions, the legal talk, the subtle manipulation. "They think you need a guardian," I said. "Exactly. And guardianship can be twisted by people who believe they're helping. I've seen it happen, children taking control of their parents' assets for their own good." The cafe suddenly felt smaller, more fragile. "So what will you do?" I asked. He looked at me with calm resolve. "I'm going to make sure my wishes are protected, no matter what happens." He slipped the papers back into the envelope and said, "I'm putting my trust in the one person in this family who's never asked me for a thing." Before I could answer, the bell over the door chimed, and Detective Margaret came in for his regular black coffee. But instead of his usual curt nod, he walked straight to the counter with a look of purpose. "Harold," he said, "good to see you back up and around. How are you feeling?" "Better every day," Grandpa replied. "Thanks for asking." Margaret glanced at me, then back at him. "Mind if I have a word? Privately?" They moved to a corner table and spoke in low voices, too soft for me to make out. I tried to focus on cleaning the espresso machine, but the tension in their body language was impossible to ignore. Margaret was jotting notes in a small pad, and Grandpa spoke with the kind of intensity that only comes with serious matters. After about 10 minutes, they shook hands, and Margaret came back to pay. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just catching up with an old friend," he said, but his eyes lingered on me. "Take care of yourself, Anna, and keep your eyes open." When he left, Grandpa came back behind the counter, looking worn out but resolute. "What was that about?" I asked. "Insurance," he said simply. "The kind that covers more than fire or theft." The rest of the morning passed quietly, but a heaviness hung in the air. I could feel that things were moving behind the scenes, decisions being made by people who thought they were in control. Around lunch, Grandpa handed me a business card. "Call this attorney," he said. "Set up an appointment for next week. Tell her Walter Margaret sent you and that it's urgent." The name read Margaret Chen, estate planning attorney. "Grandpa, what's going on?" I asked. "I'm making sure that when I'm gone, the right person inherits what Eleanor and I built. The person who loves it for what it is, not for what it's worth." My phone buzzed then. "Ryan. Lunch tomorrow. Need to discuss Grandpa's care plan." I looked from the message to the business card and realized we were in a race. My family on one side and Grandpa on the other. Only one of them would win. Margaret Chen's office was nothing like Bradley's sterile law firm. It was warm, comfortable, lined with books and family photos. She listened as Grandpa explained everything, taking careful notes and asking questions that showed she really understood. "So you want to ensure your estate passes to your granddaughter, despite possible challenges from other family members," she summarized. "More than that," Grandpa said. "I want her to have the means to fight any challenge they bring, and not to feel guilty about it." Chen looked at me. "Anna, do you understand what he's putting in place?" "I think so," I said. "But is that really necessary? Do you think my family's going to fight him on this?" "Based on what I've seen, yes," Grandpa said quietly. "They've already started questioning my competency." Chen nodded knowingly. "Sadly, that's not unusual. Families convince themselves they're protecting their elders when they're really protecting their own interests." She outlined his options, a detailed will citing his full mental competence, a living trust that would transfer assets immediately upon his passing, medical directives defining his wishes, and documentation proving his decision-making capacity. "We'll also need witnesses who can vouch for your clarity of mind," she said. "People who know you well." "Detective Margaret's been documenting our conversations," Grandpa added. "He's seen how my son-in-law and grandson behave when they visit." Chen smiled faintly. A police officer makes an excellent witness in court. For the next hour, they went through everything. The cafe building and business would come to me, along with an investment portfolio meant to sustain and expand it. My parents would receive modest but fair bequests. Ryan would get exactly $1 and a handwritten note explaining why. That note's important, Chen said. It shows intent, not oversight. When we finished, she handed me a thick folder. These are your copies. Keep them somewhere private, somewhere your family can't find them. And Anna, she added, be ready. When people discover they've been written out of an inheritance, they don't take it quietly. The drive home was silent. Grandpa looked drained, the weight of it all showing on his face. Do you think I'm being unfair? He asked softly. No, I said. I think you're being smart. They've already shown you their priorities. He sighed. I love your parents. And Ryan too. But love doesn't mean letting them destroy everything Eleanor and I worked for. That night, I called the lawyer Chen recommended for me personally, someone to represent my side if things turned ugly. He didn't sugarcoat it. Estate disputes can drag on for years, he said. They're costly, and they break families apart. Are you ready for that? I thought of Bradley's smirk, my parents' quiet scheming, and the way they'd all expected me to fall in line. I'm ready to honor my grandfather's wishes, I said. Not long after, Ryan called. Lunch tomorrow near your place, he said briskly. It's about Grandpa's care. What about it? I asked. I'll explain tomorrow, but Anna, this is serious. We've spoken with specialists about his condition. You need to hear this. The line went dead before I could ask anything else. I sat staring at the phone, wondering what so-called specialists they'd found, and what conclusions they were planning to use against him. That night I barely slept. Chen's warning echoed in my head. It's going to get ugly. I thought of Margaret's advice, keep your eyes open, and of the folder now hidden safely in my apartment. I replayed every moment from that dinner where they'd tried to use me to manipulate him. Grandpa had asked me if I thought he was being unfair. I knew the answer, no. But fairness and ease rarely lived in the same room. The easy part was over. The next morning, Grandpa was already bustling around the café when I arrived. He seemed sharper, almost electric with purpose. Big day ahead? I asked. In a way, he said, straightening a frame on the wall. Today we start fighting back. I was about to ask what he meant when the bell above the door rang. 2 strangers in tailored suits stepped inside, a woman with a briefcase and a man holding a folder stamped with an official seal. Mr. Walter Margaret, the woman asked. That's me, Grandpa said. I'm Dr. Emily Williams, and this is Mr. Daniel Parker from Adult Protective Services. We've received reports about your welfare and capacity to live independently. My blood ran cold. They'd actually gone through with it. The war for Grandpa's life had begun. Dr. Bennett opened her case with methodical precision. Mr. Margaret, we're here to conduct a wellness assessment based on concerns raised by your family. I braced myself for panic, but Grandpa's face stayed calm, almost expectant. Of course, he said evenly. Though I should tell you, my attorney, Margaret Chen, warned this might happen. You can verify her representation if you'd like. Mr. Parker blinked. You've already retained counsel? A man my age would be foolish not to, Grandpa replied mildly, especially when relatives start asking about my finances and hinting that I'm not fit to manage them. Doctor, Bennett pulled out a tablet. We'll need to do some standard assessments. Orientation, memory, daily living skills. For the next half hour, Grandpa answered every question perfectly. The date, time, current president, arithmetic, recall. He explained his medication routine, business schedule, and bookkeeping system like a man giving a presentation. And you run this place alone? She asked. With help from my granddaughter, he said proudly. She volunteers because she cares about what her grandparents built. I see, she said, scrolling through her notes. Your family expressed concern that you might be influenced or manipulated by her. Grandpa actually laughed. Doctor, in the 6 months she's worked here, Claire has never once asked me for money, suggested changes to my will, or pressured me about financial matters. Can the same be said for the relatives who requested this assessment? Mr. Parker shifted awkwardly. Sir, we're just following procedure. Of course you are, Grandpa said pleasantly, and I appreciate anyone who looks out for older folks. But I'd still like to know exactly what concerns were raised and by whom. Dr. Bennett glanced at her notes. The report claims you've been showing confusion, making questionable financial decisions, and might be at risk of exploitation by someone involved in your business. Interesting, Grandpa said evenly. And when exactly were these supposed behaviors observed, and who witnessed them? The silence that followed said it all. They both realized the accusations were built on gossip, not facts. We'll need to speak with other parties, Dr. Bennett said at last, including your granddaughter. Well, Grandpa replied, if caring for me and running this cafe without pay counts as exploitation, then I've been blessed with the kindest exploiter alive. When they finally left, promising to follow up, we just sat there for a while, the hum of the espresso machine filling the silence. How did you know they were coming? I asked. Detective Margaret warned me, he said grimly. Apparently your brother's been asking around, spreading stories about my declining mental state, trying to build a case. My phone buzzed just then. Lunch canceled. Family emergency. We'll call later. It was from Bradley. I showed it to Grandpa. He knows it didn't go his way, Grandpa said quietly. And this is only the beginning, Claire. They'll try something else soon. He was right. Over the next few days, the pattern became obvious. Mom started calling daily, pretending to check on him, but slipping in loaded questions. Was he remembering his medicine? Was he confused about money? Dad dropped by with brochures for assisted living facilities, stressing how much safer he'd be with professional care. Bradley, of course, went straight for the throat. He showed up Thursday afternoon, briefcase in hand, businesslike as ever. Harold, he said, settling in like it was a board meeting, I've been reviewing your financial situation, and there are some gaps we should address. Grandpa didn't look up from the coffee he was brewing. Gaps? For example, Ryan continued smoothly, you haven't designated a power of attorney. If something happens medically, no one has authority to manage your affairs. I see, Grandpa said calmly, and I suppose you are volunteering for that responsibility. It makes sense, Ryan replied, for someone with legal experience to handle it. I've drafted paperwork that gives me limited authority, just for financial and medical matters if you're incapacitated. I watched in disbelief. Ryan was trying to make him sign away control of his life under the guise of protection. That's very considerate, Grandpa said mildly, but I'll have my attorney review it first. Margaret Chen's quite thorough. Bradley's jaw tightened. Of course, though she's not exactly an elder law specialist, I could refer someone more qualified. Actually, Grandpa said, still adjusting the espresso settings, she's been practicing elder law for 15 years. Won several cases defending seniors from family exploitation. I did my homework. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Ryan realized too late that he'd underestimated him. Harold, he said, his voice hardening, I just hope you're not being influenced by people who don't have your best interests at heart. Grandpa turned then, meeting his eyes squarely. You mean people asking me to sign documents giving them control over everything I own? His tone sharpened. Bradley, I've known you your whole life. I supported you through school, celebrated your career, but what you're doing now isn't love. It's greed. Bradley's face flushed. That's not fair. We're worried about you. No, Grandpa said flatly. You're worried about inheritance. There's a difference. Fine, Ryan snapped, mask slipping. But if you keep going down this path, if you keep letting yourself be manipulated, this family will do whatever it takes to protect you from your own poor judgment. Grandpa's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? It's a promise, Ryan said, stuffing his papers back into his briefcase and storming out. The bell above the door slammed against the glass as it closed. Well, Grandpa muttered, turning back to the espresso machine. At least now we know exactly where we stand. That evening, Margaret Chen called. Harold, Anna, I've received notice. Your family has filed a petition for a competency hearing. They're claiming you're being financially exploited and need a court-appointed guardian. My stomach dropped. When? 2 weeks, she said. And Anna, you need to understand, these cases often go in favor of the petitioners. Judges err on the side of caution when family claims mental decline. Meaning? I asked. Meaning your grandfather could lose the right to manage his own life if we're not ready. So here we are, waiting for the day in court that decides whether an 82-year-old man can keep the life he built. Can he fight his own family and win? Or will manipulation wear a mask called love? Drop your predictions in the comments. The hearing took place on a gray Tuesday morning in a family courtroom that smelled faintly of bleach and despair. Grandpa sat beside Margaret Chen at the defendant's table, and yes, that's what it felt like, as if caring about your granddaughter were a crime. Across the aisle, Ryan sat with his attorney, a polished woman named Victoria Hawthorne who specialized in elder law. Behind them, my parents looked tense and self-righteous, like people convincing themselves they were doing the right thing. Judge Margaret, no relation to Detective Margaret, unfortunately, looked weary, the kind of man who'd seen too many families tear each other apart over money. "This is a petition for guardianship of Mr. Walter Margaret," he began, filed by relatives expressing concern about his mental capacity and vulnerability to exploitation. Ms. Hawthorne stood first. "Your Honor, the petitioners care deeply for Mr. Margaret, but they've observed troubling signs, confusion, impaired judgment, and manipulation by someone unqualified to manage his finances." She laid out their case neatly. His heart attack showed declining health, his refusal to sell the café was evidence of poor judgment, and his reliance on me proved diminished capacity. She even produced a short psychological evaluation claiming mild cognitive impairment. Furthermore, she added, Mr. Margaret recently revised his estate in ways that disproportionately favor one granddaughter while excluding others who've expressed genuine concern. Then it was Margaret Chen's turn. "Your Honor," she said, voice steady and clear, "this is exactly the type of exploitation the law is meant to prevent, not by the elderly, but by those who claim to love them while trying to take their freedom." She called Detective Margaret to the stand first. He described Grandpa's sharpness, his independence, and the family dynamics he'd witnessed. "In my experience," he said, "when people are truly concerned, they don't start by seeking legal control of someone's assets. They start by showing up, listening, and respecting that person's choices." Next came Dr. Bennett from Adult Protective Services, whose earlier evaluation had cut straight through the lies. Mr. Margaret demonstrated full mental clarity, she testified. His reasoning was logical, his memory sound, his understanding of his situation crystal clear. I found no sign of cognitive impairment or undue influence. But the most compelling moment came from Mrs. Whitmore, our regular customer. "Harold's sharp as a tack," she declared. "He remembers my order every time, asks about my grandkids, and gives better life advice than anyone I know. Meanwhile, his own son talks to him like he's a child. It's disgraceful." When Grandpa finally took the stand, he was magnificent. "Your Honor," he said firmly, "I've managed my own life for 82 years. I built a business, raised a family, and earned what I have through hard work. The only thing that's changed is that certain people realized I might leave my money to someone who actually loves me, not someone who sees me as a retirement plan." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Margaret, can you explain your reasoning behind these estate changes?" Grandpa smiled faintly. "Certainly, Your Honor. My granddaughter Claire has spent 6 months helping me and running this cafe without asking for a cent in return. She's come in every morning, handled the work I can't anymore, and treated my life's work with respect and love. Meanwhile, the rest of my family has spent those same 6 months trying to prove I'm incompetent so they can sell my cafe and lock me in a nursing home." He gestured toward them. "They call it love, but love doesn't mean lying to social services or hiring lawyers to take someone's rights away. Real love respects a person's choices, even when those choices aren't profitable." Ms. Hawthorne tried to shake him on cross-examination, but Grandpa never wavered. He answered every question clearly, recalled every detail, and explained his reasoning like a man in complete control of his mind. "Mr. Margaret," she pressed, "don't you find it odd to leave most of your estate to someone who works for you?" Grandpa smiled. "Claire doesn't work for me. She works with me without pay because she loves what we've built. If that's a conflict of interest, then every parent who leaves money to a child they trust is guilty of one too." The judge called a short recess. Outside, Ryan paced, whispering furiously with his attorney, while my parents sat pale and silent. "How do you think it went?" I asked Margaret Chen. "Better than expected," she said. "The judge didn't buy their story, but we'll see." When we returned, Judge Margaret looked stern but calm. "After reviewing all testimony, this court finds no grounds for guardianship. Mr. Margaret is fully competent. The petition appears motivated by financial expectations, not genuine concern." Relief flooded the room. Grandpa squeezed my hand, tears in his eyes. The judge continued, "This court is also troubled by evidence suggesting coordinated efforts to present Mr. Margaret as incompetent. Such behavior may qualify as elder abuse under state law." Ryan went white. My parents looked sick. "Mr. Margaret," the judge said, "you remain free to manage your affairs, and any future petitions on this matter will face extreme scrutiny." Walking out of court felt like victory, but it was a heavy one. We'd kept his freedom, but we'd lost our family. In the parking lot, my parents approached. "Harold," Dad said, "we never meant for it to go this far." "But it did," Grandpa replied. "You tried to take my life away because you didn't like how I chose to live it." "We were worried," Mom cried. "No, you were worried about the inheritance," he said flatly. Ryan passed without looking at us. "This isn't over," he muttered. "Yes, it is," Grandpa said. "For you, it's over." That night at the café, we shared apple pie in the corner booth, quiet and tired. "Do you regret it?" I asked. "Losing your family?" "I didn't lose them," he said softly. "I just learned who they really were. But I still have you, and that's enough." I didn't know it then, but that would be our last peaceful evening. 3 weeks later, he passed in his sleep, a letter on his dresser addressed to me. "Claire," it read, "by the time you see this, they'll be starting the next round. My will is solid, but they won't stop trying. Use what I've left you to fight. The café and your freedom are yours. Don't ever let them take that from you. Love, Grandpa." At the funeral, my family sat in the back, while I sat up front with Mrs. Whitmore, Detective Margaret, and the few who truly cared. The pastor spoke about a man who built something worth protecting. My family didn't say a word to me, but I could feel their eyes. They were already planning their next move. A week later, we gathered for the will reading in Margaret Chen's office. She began with the smaller gifts, $10,000 each to Mrs. Whitmore and Detective Margaret for their loyalty, $50,000 each to my parents for raising me right. Then came Bradley's. "To my grandson, Ryan Margaret, I leave $1 and this message. You had every chance to earn my respect. You chose greed instead." Bradley's face turned crimson. "He was clearly not competent," he shouted. "We just proved otherwise 3 weeks ago," Margaret said coolly. She continued reading. The café, the investments, worth around $6 million, and a lake house no one knew he still owned, all left to me, plus a $1 million trust dedicated solely to defending the will. "Claire Margaret is to spare no expense protecting her inheritance," Chen read. The room erupted. My parents demanded explanations. Ryan swore he'd contest. Margaret handed him a folder. "Inside are depositions, bank records, medical reports, and recordings. Your grandfather documented everything. Every attempt you made to undermine him is on tape." Bradley's color drained completely. "He recorded us?" "He protected himself," she said simply. Silence filled the room. "Why would he do this?" Mom whispered. "He didn't do anything to you," I said. "He made his own choices. That's what you couldn't stand." When they left, defeated, I felt no triumph, only peace. The illusion of family was gone, but in its place was freedom. Margaret handed me the café keys. "What now?" she asked. I smiled through tears. "I'm going to build something beautiful, something they can never take from me." Success came with new kinds of problems, like discovering that Grandpa's small café sat on $4 million worth of real estate, or that his investments included shares in companies I'd never even heard of. The biggest surprise was the lake house. It wasn't just a cottage. It was a 23-acre estate with a farmhouse, guest cabin, and Ruth's old plans for a family retreat center. She dreamed of a place where people could reconnect and learn simple skills. Reading her notes felt like she was still guiding me. 3 months after reopening, Golden Mornings had become everything she imagined, warm, bustling, and alive again. I kept the mismatched chairs, the old photo wall, and Grandpa's corner table, but added new equipment and revived Ruth's recipes. The cafe's Instagram had 40,000 followers who came for coffee but stayed for the stories, about love, loss, and rebuilding. For the first time, I walked the floor with confidence, not shame. Then Sarah, my new manager, approached. "Someone's here to see you. Says he's your brother." Through the window, I saw Ryan pacing outside, thinner, rumpled, humbled. "Send him in." He looked around, taking in the laughter, the success, and sighed. "You've done well, Anna." "I have," I said evenly. "What do you need?" He hesitated. "I lost everything. My job, my marriage. I was wrong. I miss my sister." I studied him. "You tried to destroy our grandfather." "I know," he said quietly. "I can't fix it, but I can try to be better." "Why should I believe you?" "Because losing everything shows you what actually matters. You built something real. I finally see that." He told me he was working at a small firm now. Less money, more meaning. For a while, we just sat, watching customers laugh and talk. "We can't go back," I said. "No," he agreed. "But maybe we can start again." I nodded. "Start by making things right with Mom and Dad. Be their son, not their lawyer." He smiled faintly. "I will." As he left, he turned back. "I'm proud of you, Anna." "I'm not forgiving you for you," I said softly. "I'm doing it for me." That moment felt like the beginning of peace. 1 year after Grandpa's death, Golden Mornings had grown to 3 locations, each one filled with the same warmth. Reporters called, magazines wanted features, and people said I'd turned family tragedy into community. The Telenor was simpler. I'd just cared. Then one rainy morning, a call came. Ms. Margaret, this is Daniel Caldwell from Caldwell Development Group. We'd like to buy your properties. $15 million for all 3 cafés. My heart raced, but my voice stayed steady. I'm not selling. Everyone has a price, he said smoothly. Let me show you yours. I hung up knowing one thing for sure. Grandpa and Eleanor hadn't built something to sell. They'd built something to protect. Caldwell looked every bit the powerful developer. Expensive suit, practiced smile, and the kind of confidence that came from never having to care how his choices hurt others. His glass-walled conference room overlooked Central Park, designed to make visitors feel small. Miss Margaret, thank you for coming, he said, motioning to a chair. I think you'll find our proposal compelling. He spread out sleek blueprints showing the future he envisioned, luxury towers replacing my cafés. We're redeveloping 3 city blocks, residences, retail, tech offices. You'd make $15 million in cash, closing in 30 days. And what happens to the people who live there now? I asked. They'll be relocated, he said with a dismissive wave. That's progress. Progress for who? I asked. Caldwell's voice cooled. You can't stop development, Ms. Margaret. With or without your cooperation, this will happen. The question is whether you profit or get swept aside. Margaret leaned forward. And if she doesn't sell? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Then, taxes get reassessed, inspections become more frequent, and permits take longer. Bureaucracy can be unkind. Are you threatening me? I asked, standing. Just explaining how the system works. Meeting's over, Margaret said, collecting the papers. $24 million, final offer, Caldwell called after us. I turned back. You just added $9 million in 30 seconds. That means my properties are worth far more and that you're desperate. You're right, Mr. Caldwell. Everyone has a price. Mine just isn't money. A week later, the harassment began. Surprise inspections, bogus violations, lost permits. But Caldwell underestimated me. I wasn't alone. Detective Margaret, now retired, helped document every visit. Mrs. Whitmore called in political favors from her late husband's contacts. Our customers and followers turned into an online army. Save Golden Mornings went viral, and soon the story hit TV. Family cafe fights, powerful developer. Cameras captured neighborhood voices standing up for us. This place is family, Mrs. Whitmore told reporters. You can't replace that with glass and steel. Then came the best surprise of all. Ryan called. Turn on Channel 7, he said. Caldwell was on screen, cornered by reporters asking about intimidation tactics. Public documents, obtained legally, thanks to Bradley, proved his company had targeted small business owners who refused to sell. You helped with this? I asked. Told you I wanted to make better choices, he said. Helping you fight corporate bullies seemed like a start. 2 weeks later, Caldwell called again, his arrogance gone. Ms. Margaret, perhaps we can revise our offer. Keep Golden Mornings as an anchor tenant. No, I said. Not for $15 million, not for 24. We're staying. The community has spoken. You're making a mistake, he said. No, I replied. I'm making a choice, and for once, it's mine. Golden Mornings stayed exactly where it belonged. The cafes thrived, the community grew, and the noise of the city's so-called progress faded outside our doors. 5 years later, I stood in the flagship kitchen watching my team prepare for our busiest day, the 5th anniversary of Grandpa Harold's passing. Golden Mornings had become a small empire. 7 cafes, a roasting business, a nonprofit helping family shops survive, and Ruth's Retreat Center finally realized. People lined the block with flowers and notes, honoring a man who built something that mattered. Even Daniel Caldwell showed up that day, older, humbled. Miss Margaret, he said quietly, I came to apologize. Years ago, I tried to destroy what your grandfather built because I didn't understand its value. What changed? I asked. My daughter, he said with a sad smile. She found out what I'd done and was horrified. She made me learn your story. And standing there, surrounded by laughter, coffee, and the hum of real connection, I finally understood what Grandpa meant when he said love is about what you build and what you choose to protect. She said she was ashamed to have a father who tried to tear down something beautiful just to make money. I studied his face, searching for that old arrogance, but it was gone. What I saw instead was sincerity, softened by years of reflection. She was right to be ashamed. He admitted quietly, what you've built here, what your grandfather envisioned, this is what cities actually need. Places where community grows naturally, where people matter more than profit margins. I spent decades destroying spaces like this. I never understood what I was taking away until it was too late. "What are you doing now?" I asked. "Working with a nonprofit," he said. "We help small businesses stand up to development pressure. It's not much, but it's something. We've helped a dozen families keep their shops this year." "That's more than something," I said. "That's a legacy." He hesitated. "Would it be too much if I said a few words at the memorial? I know I don't deserve the platform, but maybe people need to hear that even someone like me can change." At 2:00, we moved the service outdoors to fit the crowd. The street was lined with people, neighbors, old friends, and strangers who had made Golden Mornings part of their daily lives. I had written a speech, but as I looked out at the faces filled with gratitude and memory, I put the paper away. "Walter Margaret believed that serving coffee was really about serving souls," I began. "He taught me that every interaction is a chance to make someone feel valued. Every customer is an opportunity to build a bridge. Every day is a gift to create something good." I told them about his quiet strength, his stubborn decency, his belief that dignity should never depend on a person's wallet. I spoke of how he fought to live on his own terms, and how that courage helped me find mine. "His greatest gift wasn't the money he left me," I said, looking at my parents and Bradley. "It was the example of choosing love over fear, community over profit, and principles over convenience." When Daniel Caldwell stepped forward, the crowd murmured. Many remembered his face from the headlines years ago. "I'm probably the last person who should speak today," he began. 5 years ago, I tried to destroy what Walter Margaret built because I didn't understand its worth. I saw property where he saw home, profit where he saw belonging. I used power to intimidate and arrogance to justify it. But Walter and his granddaughter taught me something I should have learned long ago. Some things aren't for sale. Not because they lack value, but because their value is immeasurable. He paused, his voice trembling. "They taught me the real question isn't what can I take, but what can I give. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to live by that." The crowd was silent. Then someone started clapping. Soon everyone was. The service continued with soft jazz drifting through the afternoon air. People shared stories, how Walter had encouraged them, helped them, remembered their names. Each story was another thread in the tapestry of kindness he'd left behind. When the crowd thinned, I stood by the window where Grandpa used to sit and watch the world. Ryan joined me quietly. "He would have loved this," he said, nodding at the lingering groups. "He knew," I answered. "That's why he fought so hard." Ryan smiled sadly. He had changed. His work now focused on helping families navigate legal troubles, often pro bono. He'd remarried a teacher named Isabel, gentle and grounded, and they'd named their baby Ruth. "I have something for you," he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a document creating the Walter Margaret Foundation for Family Business Preservation, funded entirely from Bradley's savings. "I can't undo what I did," he said, "but maybe I can help others avoid the same mistakes." That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in the original café with a cup of coffee brewed just as Grandpa liked it. Dark, strong, honest. The walls were filled with photos, weddings, fundraisers, laughter, and life. My phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Whitmore. "Walter would be so proud." An email from the Times. "Beautiful service. Story runs Sunday." A voicemail from Isabel. "Thank you for helping Ryan become the man he was meant to be." But it was a message from a customer I barely knew that made me cry. I moved to New York alone. It read, "Golden Mornings taught me that family isn't who you're born to, it's who shows up for you." That was Harold's real legacy. Not money, not buildings, but the belief that we're all responsible for one another. Every day, we choose whether to build walls or bridges, to lift people up or tear them down. I opened the Golden Mornings Instagram account, now over 2 million followers strong, and typed, "Today we honored Walter Margaret. But every day we honor him by treating each other with dignity, by creating spaces where everyone belongs, by proving that love is stronger than greed." By morning, the post had thousands of comments, stories of forgiveness, reconciliation, courage, small cafe owners sharing victories, families finding their way back to one another. But as the city lights flickered outside, I didn't think about numbers or followers. I thought about Grandpa and Grandma Ruth, about the long chain of love and struggle that had led here. Sometimes you have to lose the family you thought you had to find the one you were meant to build. Outside, New York hummed, restless and relentless. Inside Golden Mornings, the lights glowed soft and golden. Tomorrow would bring new faces, new stories, new choices. But tonight, I was home, in the heart of what Walter and Eleanor had built, surrounded by proof that goodness once planted keeps growing. And if this story stays with you, remember this. Our greatest inheritance isn't money or property. It's the wisdom to choose love over fear every single day.